Good evening, everyone. 7 o'clock. I'm so excited to get started with you guys. We're going to be creating your energy-free home part 2. This is the second in a 2-part series. And so before we go too far, I want to get my team up here. I want to introduce, I think I can see him pop up. There's Delaney Davis, who's operating everything from the mothership in Houston, Mission Control. Kimberly Hayner, our social director, media communications director, she's here to support tonight. Chloe Ferrari, one of our enhanced interns, and Austin Harrell, one of our other enhanced interns. And somewhere floating around there in the weeds is Gary Cade. There he is, Gary Cade, our green building colleague. So really excited to have everyone here with us tonight. So just a little review. This is the 4th of a 4-event series that we call the Bowtie Chats. I wonder how we came up with that. Event 1 was creating your green home. Event 2 was creating your beautiful home. Event 3 was creating your not too big home. And this is the 4th and final of our 4-event series called Creating Your Energy-Free Home. And if you've missed any of these, they are all available for your viewing pleasure on our YouTube channel, including part 1 of this, which is our final Your Energy-Free Home presentation. All right, so as a little kind of housekeeping thing here, I want to let you know that the first 20 minutes is going to be sharing of insights and knowledge at a fairly rapid clip. And the second 20 minutes, we're going to break out into rooms for open forum discussion. So you're going to be muted during the breakout room. And we're going to invite you, if you don't mind, to hold all your questions and keep your cameras off until we're in the breakout room at the end. And then we can all get together and see what you've learned and answer any questions you have, and also open up opportunities if there's anyone in this event who would like to have us help you. Our day job is actually doing this for people, so I'd be thrilled to do that. So before we start, a brief review of our conversation of the fundamentals of energy from last time. We talked about temperature, we talked about humidity, heat, the difference between sensible and latent heat. We talked about energy and the difference between energy and power. We talked about the pathways for heat flow. And we talked about how in your kitchen, every morning you have an opportunity, depending on what your diet is, to understand the 3 pathways for energy transfer. Conduction, when you're frying your egg. Convection, when you're blowing on your morning coffee to cool it. And radiation, when you're making your morning toast. So little did you know that breakfast was actually a science experiment, a little class for you guys. And then we talked about conservation, utilization, and generation as the 3 steps, and in that order that we would want to take to create an energy-free home. We discussed extensively last time the conservation aspect, human behavior, design, air sealing, and insulation. This time we're going to go a little further, looking at some of the others. Okay, so this is going to give me fits today. I'm just going to do this. Utilization. Utilization is the energy that we're using inside our home. So once we take care of all the energy that we might have escaped the house or lose from the house, now we're going to be talking about the equipment that goes in the house. The HVAC equipment, and in particular space heating and distribution in this climate zone. Water, heating and distribution. We're going to touch on major appliances, lighting, and plug loads and their relative impacts on the overall energy performance of your home. So in terms of HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, when we're looking at a high-performance home, we're typically moving to an all-electric home, but we can still do high efficiency in terms of gas. And what we look at is something in the 95 to 98% efficiency ratio. And if it's a heat pump, we're looking at what we call coefficient of performance of anywhere in the range of 1.5 to 4. A heat pump has a newer heating seasonal performance factor, and what this is rating is the BTUs that are generated for each watt hour that's used. And on the other side of that, for cooling, again in terms of the heat pump, we look at a rating called a SEER or SEER rating. And this is the BTU that's removed per each watt hour used. When we think about heating and cooling systems in a high-performance home, we think about an all-electric home, and our thoughts go right to geothermal. Geothermal is considered an effective and efficient system because it doesn't rely on the input energy to create the heat. In a geothermal system, we put 1/4 of the energy in to run the compressor, but the other 3/4 of the energy comes from the ground, from the renewable energy in the earth. That means we have roughly a 400% efficiency ratio, and that compares to the 90 to 98% efficiency ratio that we get from a gas unit. We are now moving into a super effective air source heat pump. So we talked about geothermal, which is ground source heat pump. And now we're moving into an era where air source heat pumps are actually able to generate high efficiencies in terms of energy extraction from the air down to minus 12 degrees. So this is a system that we're seeing that's taking a lot of great strides in the high performance home arena. Once we have this dialed in a high performance home, we're focusing our insulation and our orientation and our windows so that we're reducing the energy loss. So our HVAC loads actually become quite low and other loads become more prominent, in particular domestic water heating and the distribution of that. So what we're using these days is what we call an air source heat pump. So this is very similar to the air source heat pump that we talked about with the mini split that we just looked at. And this uses available ambient heat energy in the air and uses a heat pump to concentrate that heat and create the domestic hot water for your home. Whoop, we're gonna go back one. Once we have the hot water, once we're effectively generating the hot water, then we have to think about distribution. In a high performance home, we're typically looking at something called a structured plumbing system, which is essentially a recirculating loop. So what this means is the water from the tank is sent out through a pump to the end use fixture, but rather than going down the drain as we're waiting for all that cold water to purge out of the system, there's a return loop that comes right back to the bottom of the tank. That return loop allows us to send out the hot water and purge all that cold water back to the tank where it can be heated rather than sending it down the drain. And in the high performance homes that we're generating, literally you send less than a half a cup of water down the drain before you have 100, 120 degree temperature at the tap. Once we've attacked the HVAC and the water, we then look at the major appliances. And this is things like your cooking equipment, your laundry equipment. In terms of major appliances, one of the big ones is the ranges. And what we're seeing is a move from gas ranges or coiled electric ranges to something called an induction range, which basically works kind of like a microwave, where the iron molecules in the pot is what becomes excited and it heats the pot, not the surface. Why that's good is that most typical gas ranges are roughly 30% efficient, which means 70% of that heat energy is going into your home. In a high performance home with an induction range, 80% of the energy is going into the food. The next thing we look at is lighting. In a high performance home, we're looking at all LED and we're being very careful with the lighting that we're using in the location for it. Once we do all of these, you'd be surprised to learn that plug loads, lighting and plug loads end up becoming some of the largest energy demands in a high performance house because we've attacked everything else and they're all that's left. And I was just talking about this beforehand, that your behavior, occupant behavior, in terms of these two specific things, lighting and plug loads, can make a huge difference. So once we've created a very tight envelope and a high insulated envelope, and then we've reduced the amount of energy in the systems that we're using, we then move to generation. And this is the renewable energy that we're adding to the home. And this is how we get to net zero. There are 4 paths that are primary paths for us to get to net zero energy. Passive solar is the first, and passive solar basically relies on the free incidental energy that comes to the home from the sun. We have high summer sun and we have low winter sun. That's in our favor because we can use carefully tuned overhangs to block out the high summer sun and emit the low summer sun. And it's it's almost like magic. We've had clients send us pictures actually when we're in the wintertime and they're showing the sunlight that's tracking across their house and landing on the far opposite end of their walls in the wintertime. Solar electric. So that's the next step. Once we take care of the free energy we get, now we take a look at the solar electric. And so what this is going to do is give us a chance to harvest the sun's energy to basically induce electron flow. This creates current that allows us to create the energy that we need to power the devices in our home. And when we're doing a solar electric assessment, kids, don't try this at home. I'm sure this wasn't OSHA approved, but that's me with our solar provider, John Wakeman from SUR Energy, on the home of one of our roofs, trying to emulate what was going to be the height of the new roof surface so we could see what kind of solar collection we could get. And what you're not seeing us use, we're going to be using in a second, as soon as John gets his bearings about them, is something called a solar pathfinder. And this is the device that you're looking at. And what this allows us to do is basically see the path of the sun superimposed over the sky dome, so we can understand where there are opacities that would prevent us from harvesting the sun energy. These systems that we're putting in currently are typically grid tied, which means that during the day, when we're producing energy, if we're making more energy than what we're using, we push it back to the grid. So you may be actually powering your neighbor's house. When the sun goes down, we pull from the grid. Over the course of a year, 365 days, these two systems balance. Now, one of the things that we're moving into now is battery backup, where we're actually able to take that excess energy that we're generating, and rather than sending it back to the grid, we're actually storing it on site. This is a battery array of a project that we just recently finished called For the Journey. And you can learn more about this on our YouTube channel as well. Solar thermal is something that had been pretty popular for a while, but with the increase in efficiency of solar panels, solar thermal has somewhat fallen off the radar screen. But as we go to greater and greater efficiencies, I believe that we're going to see solar thermal coming back on the horizon. And lastly, wind. Wind is a possibility, and you'd be surprised to learn that Michigan, along its coastal region, along the west coast of Michigan on Lake Michigan, has a higher wind potential than any location in Florida. However, in the center part of the state, where a lot of our projects are, the wind potential falls off fairly greatly. There's also issues with mechanical vibration and maintenance with wind. So we're looking at the generation being these 4 steps in this order. So what net zero energy is once we do all of these things, we're basically energy balancing, right? We're looking at all of our demand loads, and we're looking at our renewable resources, and these equal across the course of a year. When we talk about energy loads, one concept I want to leave you with tonight is something called passive house. And this is essentially creating an extremely reduced energy load, 80 to 90% less energy load than a conventional home. And so when people often ask me, Michael, what's the best heating system? Well, I say that's an R40 wall, an R60 roof, an R20 foundation, triple glazed windows, and an ACH under one. The best heating system is the heating system that your house provides in terms of its energy performance. And that's called a passive house. A passive house is basically high performance envelope, continuous insulation, continuous ventilation, balanced ventilation, and thermal bridge free construction. And it's absolutely possible to do this. We just recently completed a passive house that was Michigan's first FIAS Plus 2015 pre-certified home. And it is, as you can see here, we look at the heating and cooling demand, which is the overall load. And then we look at the instantaneous heating loads and cooling loads during the coldest and hottest day. And then we look at the source energy. All of these things put together generate a super performing home that reduce the amount of loading so that we can go with even less and less equipment. And when we do a high performance home, we have to be very careful to understand how the moisture is going to perform across the wall. So this is what we call the WUFI, W-U-F-I, hydrothermal analysis that we're able to do on this project. And what I've discovered over the years is it's always water 1, Michael 0. So in response to that, we take a look at the total moisture content in the building assembly. And as you can see, the energy modeling is showing it's tracking towards drying, which makes us very, very happy. And this is the home. This home is located on the northwest side of town, and it is potentially going to be on tour in a virtual sense in 2021. So stay tuned for more about that. And when we are working with clients, we have the same basic 3 steps that we take for every client to whatever their aspirations are for energy performance. So we take a very complicated system, very complicated process, and we make it easy. ABC, 1, 2, 3. The first is exploring your visionary concepts, like putting the whys behind, like what are we up to? Then we come up with a cohesive design solution. We determine what's necessary. And then the third part is putting it all together and strategizing on how this is going to happen. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Gary Cade, who is a builder who is very, very strong in the sustainability realm. And he's a gentleman who we have had a great opportunity to work with recently. And I'd like to have him share a few perspectives from the vantage point of a builder. Take it away, Gary.
Wow, Michael, you're really moving fast today. So really exciting stuff, possibilities for the future. Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Cade. Michael's asked me to share some perspectives from a builder's point of view. And I've been a licensed builder for 40 some years, and all this great stuff that Michael's talking about, how come the homes out there being built look like all the same stuff that they've always been doing? Because, you know, we as a group, builders as a group, really like our comfort zone is doing the things the same way we've always done them. So that's all these new ideas and such aren't really being adopted by builders because, again, we're most comfortable doing the things we've always done. So what I've noticed is what we're building today are BNOs, which are brand new, obsolete homes, which is really kind of crazy when you think about it. Brand new and obsolete. And I'm really frustrated, and that's why I think Michael and his team is such a breath of fresh air about new possibilities for the future. And where it all starts is by planning. If there's something that you're going to take away from today, is it's really how critical planning is to the process. There's something called the planning pyramid, and for 1 hour of planning before will save you 10 hours of adjusting during and 100 hours of correction after. And literally you could put dollar signs before each one of those numbers. And in most building projects, that's exactly what happens. Cost overruns, huge time delays because of poor planning. And again, like I said, if there's something that you really want to take away is the importance of planning. And the other thing I got to ask you is, you know, fulfilling on a big dream, fulfilling on a big goal, what do you think is the hardest part? I'll tell you, the hardest part is actually getting started. You know, thinking about it, wishing about it, dreaming about it's never going to make it happen. And something that is really an opportunity today is Michael's calendar is available when we go to the breakout rooms. If you really see something that you'd like to, you know, get some feedback on, or what you're thinking about for either remodeling or building new, it's a huge opportunity to just chat with Michael. He'll actually, for free, give you up to 2 hours of his time. And I've so benefited from your insights, Michael, and I just encourage all of you to take advantage of this huge opportunity. And that'll come, you know, during the breakout rooms if that so moves you. So Michael, back to you.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, BNO really pretty much covers it. And how you get there is not doing the planning on the front end. So Gary, you brought up a good point. And for many people, for many of our clients, for many of the folks who are on this call possibly, imagining a home where it's, particularly right now, where health of our indoor environmental situation is really, really key in many people's minds. It's hard to imagine a home that could actually heal you, but that actually can happen. It's hard to imagine a home that would be really carefully planned out, built to the highest standards, and have verification, right? So you know actually what you're getting. I can guarantee you that the BNOs are not doing that. And to imagine a home where what we're building right now, we consider the homes of the future today, where we are not only building an incredible home for you now, we're building a home that's going to structure and position you well into the future, because the market that's coming up is very much aware of this. we are no longer looking at the same buying segment. They are now very much aware, and we've got every day you turn around, there's always something new in the news talking about what's going on with energy efficiency and net zero homes. California has mandated that by 2030, all new homes will be net zero or net zero ready. That's already in the building code. So this just points right to what Gary was saying about BNOs. And the truth is, you don't have to imagine this. We can actually deliver them. I mean, that's our day job. That's our passion. That is why I was put here on this earth, was to help you create this for yourself in your lifetime. So we want to say thank you very much for attending this event. And we're now going to move into the open forums where we're going to have a chance to have conversation with you, potentially create something, a new possibility for you. So thanks for attending, and we'll see you in the open forums.